Hello, Facebook. Welcome back to the Henry Holster Shop. I've been away for a little while, so I'm that happy to be back here on a Friday night doing Holster Life. Tonight we're talking about save or spend, how to start to assess where and when your business should be spending money in order to help you grow. So let me prop this camera up. I got some preliminary stuff. I actually did a little bit of homework this time. I got a few tool tips and a few other odds and ends before we dive into the topic. So, if you're a holster maker, as always, please post your company name in the comments so that I can see who you are, not just by your personal name, but by your company name. And then please like the feed and share it so that we can get questions to distribute and have a good time. I was in South Carolina for most of last week. May not be able to stay for the whole thing, says Skylar. Well, that's okay. You can watch it later. It'll still be here. I'm going to finish typing up a couple more notes on my laptop, and then we'll get rolling with the tool tip. That'll take a couple minutes, and then we'll dive right into the topic for this evening. I keep thinking the camera's over here, but it's actually over there. I see you, camera. Give myself a note. Hello, Jim Ryan. Thank you for stopping by. Ryan Brapp is here. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Todd. Thank you guys for stopping by. So, starting off the tool tip, I had a Facebook post a couple days ago where I showed some pictures of these little guys. These are O-flute countersink tools. I have a set of 3. I think I got these from Harbor Freight. They don't have a brand on them, but you can get them from a bunch of places. Lee Valley has them. MSC Direct has them. McMaster Carr will carry them. Hello, Tyler. Hello, Michael. Thank you guys for stopping by. So these 3 sizes are good for all kinds of things. For eyelets, I use the middle size, and I actually chucked all 3 of these in my drill press, and I ground down the tips a little bit because they tend to be kind of sharp. And if you're holding a piece of plastic and deburring the hole, you can get through and poke yourself. So I went ahead and rounded off the tips on those, and that made a big difference. But if I ever lost one of these, I'd buy another one immediately. I use these all the time. But I think that a lot of people are actually too dependent on hole deburring. And the reason I think that is because the main reason I see guys discussing hole deburring is because they're concerned about splitting eyelets. And you really should be able to flare your eyelets and not have splitting issues without having perfectly clean holes. Hello, Will Silk. Hello, Mike Hallam. And so if you're finding that you're splitting eyelets and that deburring the holes reduces the number of eyelets you split, that may be an acceptable solution to the issue. That may be the best way for you at the time to resolve the splitting problem. But I can drill fairly nasty holes and still flare 8, 9 eyelets through a single thickness of 0.08 and not have them split. It has a lot to do with good dies. These ones work great. You can countersinks. I really like these ones because they don't dig as far into the hole as easily. So, first tool tip. But tonight's kind of a bonus night. I was looking around on my bench about what else I had around here, and there are a couple of things I wanted to show you. So, these guys, flush nips, but these are a little different. I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see. These ones are a little chewed up. These are actually specialty guitar makers pliers. They're essentially flush nips, but they've been ground so the teeth actually meet right at the tip. Clark, I have not used a kick press for eyelets. Most of my designs don't use that many eyelets, and my arbor press does eyelets so easily and quickly that I've never even considered switching. A kick press takes up a fair bit more space, and my arbor press does a great job, so I've never tried one. But these that are actually really flush ground, I got these from, I don't know if you can see the logo, the Stuart McDonald Guitar Company, Stu McDonald, Stu Mac. And these are great for pulling eyelets, for pulling out little nails. They're good for all kinds of stuff. Very rarely do I find something that these little guys can't. Flush nips are great to have. Yeah, Michael Hallam, Stu Mac. So, tonight's topic is shop upgrades and save versus spend. Trying to develop a way to think through the upgrades you're considering for your shop. Hi, Jared. The upgrades you're considering for your shop and how to prioritize which ones should happen first, and also how to be careful and not stupid about how you spend the money your business has. So, cash flow is completely separate from the overall amount of revenue. Yeah, buy versus build does come into it, Jared. Hello, Kyle. But for a lot of things I'm talking about, build isn't really an option. Like this big vacuum former or a CNC machine, build for what I needed it to do, build was not going to be cost effective. So I'm just going to run through a couple of quick points on the buy side to help you understand how I think about things I'm considering purchasing for my business. So the first one is cash flow. How much does the thing cost in dollars? Can I even afford it right now? That's a very basic question. Aside from very large pieces of machinery, I'm not a fan of financing things if you can avoid it. But cash flow can really hurt your business. If you have lots of orders coming in, but you don't have enough cash this month to meet your expenses or buy materials for those orders, then you don't have a business. The whole thing falls apart. And so when I'm looking at larger expenses, like when I bought this vacuum former behind me, I paid cash for it, and I looked carefully at what orders I had that I had set aside money from for a couple months, and what orders I had that I expected to be coming in, mostly dealer order kind of things, in the 6 weeks after I planned to make the order, and then did the math on whether or not I could absorb that cash flow hit without being in danger of bottoming out. And there are a couple of ways you can adjust for that. One of them is, buy a little less beer and sock away some more money. If you have cash in a reserve as a safety net for your business, that's excellent. You can also, although it's not ideal, you can carry a small line of credit. I have one for my business. I currently have no balance on it. But if I got in a position where I had to buy materials, or say I ruined a whole batch of holsters, something happened, and I had to buy stuff and turn it around right away, a small line of credit at a local bank where I can go in and shake somebody's hand and they know me, that's not great, but workable. So the first question is, how much does the improvement cost? Can I actually afford it? Do I have cash money for it? The second thing, which goes along with that, is how quickly can I realize the benefit of the new upgrade? And this is an area where a lot of things, a lot of holster process improvements are in a little bit of a gray area. Clark says, I used credit for everything and paid off at the end of the month to earn free stuff from the credit card. Yeah, Clark, that works fine as long as you have the cash on hand to deal with it. I do a very similar thing for a lot of my purchases, but I always have total cash set aside at the beginning of the month for everything I plan to spend. So if I had to pay off the credit card in total on any day of the month, I'm not stuck. And so even though I use my credit card to make purchases, I don't actually run the limit above my cash reserve. That's just a safety risk thing for me. Ryan Brapp says his website processes orders and deposits cash within 2 days, eliminating the material for orders being needed without having funds. For retail orders, that makes a lot of sense. For larger dealer things, where you're working on purchase orders or you're getting a check and it's not being handled through a website, not being paid with a credit card, I deliver a lot of my stuff on net 30 terms. And so I have to be able to have funds to pay for the materials up front because I don't get paid till after I deliver the finished parts, which is different from the retail thing. And that's a definite cost of the wholesale side of the business, is that companies are used to working in a business-to-business way and not as a customer to a business. And so things like net 30 terms are very common in business-to-business deals, but it changes the way you have to handle your cash flow. So some tools that I buy directly impact the bottom line. The tool itself makes money. Like my first CNC, yeah, I agree, Jared, terms are the devil, but sometimes I benefit from net 30 terms sometimes, and I also get hurt by net 30 terms sometimes. It mostly comes out in the wash. I try to avoid it. But some machines, some tools, some pieces of equipment begin generating revenue for you immediately. Like if you're heating your plastic with a toaster oven and it takes 5 minutes and you go to a heat press and it's down to 1 minute and 30 seconds, that makes a huge difference. That makes more holsters per hour, more units per day. That's more money at the end of the week. That thing will pay for itself quickly. Other tools don't actually do that as clearly, but they relate to a category of opportunity costs and energy. I'm a one-man shop. I have a limited amount of energy and a very limited amount of time. And so if I can find a way to purchase a tool, to purchase a piece of equipment that allows me to buy back, by buying that machine, by buying that tool, I'm buying back my own time so that I can allocate it to other things that are a higher priority or are more need of my attention. So opportunity costs are a very real thing in our business. I know any one of you who's watching this could make holsters with a single foam press and a toaster oven, hand drilling everything, setting your eyelets with a hand punch, and you could make holsters that way. And they could work fine. But you wouldn't have time to do almost anything else. If I tried to make holsters that way, I'd be spending all my time doing that. And I wouldn't have time to develop new products, improve the shop process. I would just be stuck in that loop of trying to get the work done. By the way, Jared, I need to get one of your bottle openers at some point. So what is the opportunity cost, or what is the opportunity gain? What is the benefit? How much time will this tool actually free up for me? So if you're flaring eyelets with a hand setter, if you do any decent number of holsters, I would say there's no question you should get a good arbor press, buy a good set of dies from Siska. Don't buy dies from Knife Kits. Don't buy dies from USA Knife Maker. The ones from Index are all right. The ones from Siska are better. And get those dies, and you can just fly through setting eyelets. You save so much time. And that time frees you up to either do more of that same thing in the given window of time, or set aside time to do other stuff that you need to be doing, which you wouldn't be able to do if you were having to slog your way through a slower process. And so you can look at the dollar amount the tool costs, how much money it will make for you, how much revenue it will generate, how much time it will free up for you, and then what else that time will allow you to do. Because so here's the thing, like if I had a way to automate my buffing so that when I trimmed a holster off the CNC, I just put it in some other machine, some other fixture, and just hit cycle start, and it buffed all the edges, and then the holster was ready to assemble. Siska, S-I-S-K-A. They're one of the main distributors of Stimson eyelets in the U.S., and they also make their own dies. They're out of hardened tool steel, very nicely polished. I I go 6 to 12 months at a time. I almost never split eyelets. I don't think I've split one in 2016. So S-I-S-K-A, Siska eyelets. But if I could free up my time, if I had a way, thank you for posting the link, Mark. If I had a way to automate the buffing process, just thinking about the time that I could free up and all the other stuff that I could do with that time, it's amazing. The opportunity benefit of freeing up that time is significant. And even if the tool might not make me tons of money, the time it freed up could make me tons of money. Okay? So when you're thinking about all these things, that's how I evaluate any particular purchase. But I'm never only evaluating one thing at a time. I have a running list of all the stuff that I want to buy for my shop. Another CNC, a lathe, a robot to buff my edges, whatever I'm thinking about buying. And so not only am I crunching the math on the individual pieces of equipment, sorry, I got some moths in here, I'm also looking at which pieces of equipment need to come next and how I can maximize the effectiveness of each piece by bringing them in a logical order. So one example would be the bandsaw cutting, sanding, buffing step. So if you don't have a good sander, you have a decent bandsaw, you don't have a good sander, it would not make sense to spend a lot of energy and money investing in buffing equipment if you don't have that intermediate step to get you from sawed edges to edges that are ready to buff. And so Jared says power hammer. Yes, make sparks, heat steel. You know, when we say crush it, knife makers with power hammers are literally crushing it. I don't know if you watch Dylan. I think Dylan Metalworks. That guy's power hammers are insane. So when I'm looking at individual machines, individual pieces of equipment, I've got a larger, better stock shop than a lot of other small companies do. And that's because I've scaled by investing in equipment and not so much by bringing in outside labor. The basic way that a lot of small companies grow is, yeah, Ryan, I would love to have the CNC buff my edges. The complication is as you go around the edge, the profile of the holster, you have horizontal edges, you have vertical edges. You would need different amounts of dwell time, and you would also need the buffer to be able to follow the edge in order to get consistent results. So really, you'd need to go 5-axis, which is on my list of machines I'd like to buy. I'd love to park a 5-axis router back there and machine complicated 3D solids, but it's not in the cards right now. Hey Jim, I've seen you comment several times the video is getting choppy, Jim Ryan. I can't tell if it's getting choppy for everybody else. If it is getting choppy, go ahead and comment on it. So Jared and John are bringing up the question of outsourcing and how much of your own process you should hold on to. Naturally, oh, you run a Mazak 5-axis every day. I don't want to hear about it, Clark. I do want to hear about it, just not right now. When you're making a decision about what you're going to buy and what you're going to keep in-house, there may be certain things that it makes sense to outsource. So Jared's a knife guy, and I'm sure he buys all his blanks and bandsaws them and grinds them into shape. But production knife companies either buy their own water jet or they outsource the water jet. A lot of companies outsource certain parts of their process if it's not cost effective to bring it in-house. Like, I would love to get into injection molding. I have stuff that is injection molded that's made for me, but it's not realistic for me to actually bring that equipment into my shop because I don't have the expertise to run it currently, and I also don't need the volume of parts that could put out. So for a lot of things, either the cost or the quantity is what tips me in the keep in or outsource direction. I used to make all my own belt loops out of Bolteron. Partly that was because I couldn't buy them cost effectively anywhere. As soon as that equation tipped and I could get them in flexible quantities at a reasonable cost, absolutely. Outsourcing all the production of my belt loops, struts, all that stuff. There's no reason for me to be making those attachments when somebody else can injection mold them in high volume at low cost, good quality, and then sell them to me on a flexible schedule. So outsourcing the actual production of your holsters is a different thing. And I know you guys know that's a service I offer. It's not especially common in the holster industry to do private label stuff like that. But, yeah, Mark, the Kydex belt loops were the bad old days. If you decide to outsource part of your production process, there are costs and benefits. The cost is you're not hands-on at every step of the process anymore, which means, to a certain point, you have to trust somebody else's QC, and you also don't have the ability to speed up and slow down the pace instantly based on your own schedule if you're relying on somebody else to make stuff. The trade-off, hello Shane, the trade-off is if you outsource something, you can get parts at a fixed cost on a delivery schedule, and you can scale the volume of production without you having to hire on new people or invest in new equipment yourself. Depending on where you are in your business, what exactly you make, and how you want to grow, outsourcing part of production may make sense or it may not make any sense. Part of deciding what equipment to buy is also the learning curve. And I've had conversations with several of my mold customers in the past 2 weeks just about this learning curve. And anytime somebody reaches out to me about CNC molds, about the Swift press, about vacuum pumps, about membrane forming. Hello, David Fillers. Thank you for stopping by. It's been a long time since I've gotten a chance to talk with you. I hope you're doing well. There's a learning curve to all these things. The learning curve for my brother Mill was intense. Still is intense. There are a lot of buttons I don't even know what they do. It's not exactly true, but there's a lot of things I don't know how to do well on it. But when you bring new equipment in, part of figuring out how soon it's going to start paying for itself is really the question, how quickly can I learn this? How fast am I going to get over that hump and make this thing productive? Part of that's just raw hours. How much time do you have and how much do you think it will take? And part of that is gumption, guts. How willing are you to grind and grind and grind until you get over that hump and start picking up some momentum? So, Ryan, a lot of guys are in that position, and I'm going to do another Facebook Live that's entirely on CNC in holster manufacturing because there are tons of neat applications. A lot of different companies are using CNC. They're doing it a lot of different ways with differing results and with different efficiencies. So I think it was Gary Lawson posted a couple days ago, maybe yesterday, that he got his first CNC, and I'm excited for him. Getting the first CNC is a big step, but you can actually learn a lot about CNC machining before you have to buy the machine. John says the learning curve literally never ended. So, because of the internet, because of social media, because of YouTube, you can learn so much more about the process you're thinking about bringing in before you put any dollars on the table. You can, at only the cost of time, do intensive, detailed research on every piece of equipment you think to bring in. And you can learn, like I learned most of my CAD programming, a lot of it, before I owned a CNC. I just tried a bunch of different kinds of software. I watched YouTube tutorials. I built things. I messed around with stuff. I played with CAM strategies. I simulated lots of stuff. And I got a lot of the legwork done so that when my first small machine showed up, I was cutting parts in the first day or two. And they were saleable parts. And so if you leap before you look ahead, before you actually learn what you're going to need to do to make the thing work, then you can get hung. Because you lay out the cash, you bring in the machine, it already cost you, it's not generating revenue, and it's going to take extra time It's actually going to slow you down while you double invest in learning it and then running it. And so you get caught in this catch-22 where you can't abandon the old process because you're behind, and you can't set aside the time to learn the new process because you're behind. The internet has obsoleted college in a lot of ways. I probably put in, for a while, I was putting in 3 or 4 hours a night, almost every night, on CNC stuff. Before I had my machine, just on CAD. Looking at software, reading forums, talking to machinists, asking lots of questions. Similar to my Saib. The Saib is a little bit of a different learning curve. There's not a lot of info out there about how to program these kind of vacuum formers. It's more trial and error, unfortunately. And so when you're looking at your shop and what you want to do, whether you decide to scale by hiring people, or you decide to scale, which is a cost, or you just decide to scale by bringing in equipment, it is affected by what you make, who you're selling to, and how quickly or slowly you plan to grow. So one of my customers who I was talking to this week, he is getting ready to grow very quickly. His business plans he's working on now have the potential to, ramp up by a factor of 10 or more if the initial few rounds of sales go well. And so he's looking at a very steep production curve where he's going to have to invest in people, and he's going to have to invest in machines, and he's going to have to do it right away. He's not going to have time to slowly learn. I don't know if it came back. It gave me froze out for a second. Looks like I'm back now. So if you're going to grow your business slowly, you have much more flexibility on how and where you spend your money and your time. The trade-off is you lose market share, because if you're growing your business slowly, you can't jump on lots of new dealers. You can't jump aggressively on new firearms that get released. You can't jump aggressively on hot influencers on social media, people whose social media accounts are getting lots of traffic. If you could get your gear into their hands, you could sort of, get a big upscale of awareness and sales. But if you're soft pedaling the business, growing too fast will actually damage you, will harm you. So for the first few years I had this company, I was very much soft pedaling. I was going very slowly. I was not putting very much outside money in. I was basically selling holsters, setting aside the holster money, using the holster money as I saved it up to make the next upgrade, a new press, a better toaster oven, a better heat gun, a spare heat gun, whatever it was I needed. But I was using Kydex money to feed the Kydex business. And once I started trying to grow the business more quickly, I started having to set aside other money and boost it into the business so I could get stuff sooner and get it running to start to generate more revenue, more volume, and then pay myself back out that money and get that momentum rolling, get the snowball going faster, and get it going down the steeper hill sooner. So in your business, this is where you know your business better than I will ever know your business, and you have to make clear decisions about how you want to grow. Do you want to do retail? Do you want to do wholesale? Do you want to do a mix? Do you like working with people? Would you like to have people in your shop? Would you rather work alone? Do you want to learn CNC machinery, or is it too technical for you? All those questions affect what equipment you invest in, how quickly you invest in it, and then what you try to make with it. I'm almost at the steep hill, says Clark. Shane Musell still doing that, no profit yet. Well, Shane, let me encourage you. One of the realities of engaging a new efficient level in the business. So for a couple of years I worked for a custom furniture company, and we made gorgeous high-end stuff. A lot of carved exotics, very fancy, complicated figured veneer work. Really neat stuff. Freehand sculpture, carving, figured woods, wild stuff. But my boss told me something then that I've never forgotten. And we were working on new jigs and new fixtures for his shop to make some of the most common products faster and more easy to ship. And he said, we're not trying to necessarily, a certain amount of money is always flowing through the business. We're just trying to catch more of it and keep more of it from flowing out immediately. And so you can increase the profit margin in the business one of two ways. Keep the actual dollar margin per item the same. You increase your profit by keeping the dollar margin per item the same and move larger volume. Say you make $1 per thing you sell per widget and you sold 500, next month you sell 5,000. Even though the percentage margin has not changed, the amount of profit you've got in the business at the end has drastically gone up. The other way is to keep your overall production volume about the same and start driving your costs down. That's the way a lot of big businesses do it, and unfortunately, they often do it by cutting corners and going cheap on materials. So I would not encourage you to try to cut the cost if cutting the cost affects the quality. But labor is the main cost in the holsters we make. More than the hardware, more than the plastic, more than the electricity to run the machines to make them. The main cost is labor. If you can drive that cost down without sacrificing quality, you're winning. You're going to take the individual amount of money, the profit percentage per unit, and drive it up because you're going to be taking that labor cost, which is eating up the big fat middle of most of the money that comes in per unit. And if you can crush that down with automation or with reorganizing the shop so the workflow flows more smoothly, if you can start batching things, if you can hire somebody in and teach them to do some of the more tedious steps that are low skill but just time consuming, you can keep the cost of the labor on that stuff down. I hate buffing holsters at a buffing wheel because I could be doing more valuable things. Michael Hallam's checking out to go eat burgers. She's camping, lucky dude. That sounds really fun. And so there's almost no end to the ways you can find efficiency in your existing shop, but you're going to deal with things of varying degrees of intensity, of like, how urgent is this? And I want to suggest something counterintuitive to you, which is, people have said, work your problems big to small. And that's true, and it's good. We do want to work problems big to small. We don't want to be majoring in the minors. If there's a major production problem, like your heat press heats unevenly and half the things you press end up scorched and you throw them away, so you're wasting that labor time and you're wasting that plastic, that's a big problem. It's got to get fixed. It can't wait. You have to solve it. But I find in my own shop that oftentimes the small problems, the little ankle-biting things that nag me around the shop that would only take a little bit of time or a little bit of money, that those things get put off and put off and put off and put off because I'm almost always thinking, what's the biggest problem I have to deal with right now? How can I devote my time and attention to that? Because it's a big problem. What ends up happening, though, is those little nagging problems suck up a few minutes of my attention here, a little bit of my energy there, a few dollars here or there. And if you have a bunch of those things and they just sort of float around the shop, eventually the sum total effect of that is they suck up a lot of time and energy. And so I think I told you guys a few weeks ago, I love these deburring tools, but I'm always losing it. So I bought 3 more of them so that I can have one in each of the major areas in my shop where I normally work, each of my major workstation areas. And they're nice and bright blue, they're easy to see. And so I went and spent money on 3 more of these so that I won't have to wander around the shop looking for it. You know, this was a small cost. These are like 10 or 15 bucks. You get them with some spare blades. So I spent like 30 or 40 bucks, and already It has saved me enough time and frustration, like, where did I put that stupid thing? Okay? It saved me enough time and frustration that it was more than worth it. But this little tool by itself does not make me more holsters. So it's hard to quantify the dollar amount that I'm saving by spending on these. But I also know that when I'm in the shop and it's late and I'm angry because I'm behind schedule and I can't find this tool, if I get stressed out, if I get worked up, if I get off base, I am more likely to make mistakes. I am more likely to forget important things. I am more likely to work slowly and inefficiently because I'm going to make errors. And so if there are things in the shop that bother me, when I see something in the shop that bothers me, I make a point, almost always, of taking just a second and asking myself, how quickly can I actually fix that? And if I can fix it in a reasonable amount of time, I will stop what I'm doing and fix it right then. Because I don't want to have to keep that on my mind. I'm a list person, but I can never keep track of all the things that are on my list of to-do in the shop. Never keep track of all the possible improvements, all the small tweaks, all the small things. And so I often have to strike while the iron's hot. I see a small thing, I think, man, I've been meaning to deal with that. I've been meaning to, whatever the issue is. Like today, I had a whole bunch of boxes on a shelf that I'd been saving for I don't know what reason. I just put them up there a long time ago. I thought, I might use these boxes. And then I realized, man, I need to get rid of those. And I've noticed them many times before. And so today, I finally got a ladder out. I went up on that top shelf. I knocked them all down. And I flattened them all out. And I put them out in the car to drop off at recycling. Because the 5 or 10 minutes it took to do that meant that that was one less thing that I had to juggle and keep on my mind. That's totally worth it for me. And all it cost me was a little bit of time. So this has happened before. I'm not seeing any fresh comments since Michael Hallam going camping. And so I'm suspicious that my connection is lousy again. So I hope that's not the case. If you are here, it says I've got 28 live viewers. If you could, please post a comment up. And that will help me see where we're at right now. So those are the ways I basically go through and make decisions about what things in the shop I'm going to invest in. How much does it cost? Can I pay cash for it? How risky is it to pay cash for it? Am I going to be in danger of running out of money? What will I have to learn in order to make the machine run, to make it work for me? Can I learn that in advance? How much time will it cost to learn it in advance? And how soon do I have to have that thing in here? So there are some things, there are some tools where you might have an order coming in. You don't have the order yet. You're not started on it yet. But you know as soon as that order starts, you're going to have that new tool. Well, if you can see in advance for sure when you're going to need it, then it's very easy to justify the cost. Just crunch the numbers. I'm going to make 150 magazine carriers. I need this better drill press because my current one keeps choking, whatever. Then do the math. It'll come out obviously better to have the better tool that will work well, that will work quickly with fewer problems. And then, once you invest in good equipment, maintain it. Keep it clean. I really like cleaning my shop. I don't know, I'm kind of a neat freak. You wouldn't know it from looking at the shop often because stuff on the benches is really scattered around, but the floors are clean. And so whenever I'm frustrated by something or I'm chewing on a concept thing and I just need some time to just chill and think, I just take a break and sweep my shop. And that is time that keeps my shop safe because I've slipped on stuff. The CNCs can throw off a lot of chips on the floor. The small router does. And that stuff can get really slippery, so it's a safety thing. Keep the shop safe, keep the floor clean. But it also is kind of calming, therapeutic, low-skill work that allows me to think, talk out loud, chew on something, take a 10-minute break, clean part of the shop, and then come back a little bit fresher and hit that same problem again. Recently, I've been still working on the learning curve on my new heat press. So I actually was on the phone with the guys from Geonite, the manufacturer today, because I'd been getting uneven heat, and I wasn't happy with it. It was an expensive heat press. It was supposed to have a really nice heating element array in it that was supposed to provide much more even heat than the cheaper ones that I'd been using. But my experience was not matching up with that. And so I called them up and took some time, asked them some questions, and they were able to help me troubleshoot and change some settings, adjust some pressure things, because that machine is much more programmable. It actually has like a digital pressure sensor readout on it, so I can actually not just like by feel, but actually dial the amount of pressure I'm getting. And all those things helped to make the holsters I was pressing today come out better than the ones I was pressing yesterday. I threw away a few pieces of plastic testing it, but that piece of equipment is here. I need it to work. I don't have another heat press currently. If that thing is not running, I'm not making any holsters on my Swift press. And so earlier in the morning, I got kind of steamed. I was frustrated. It wasn't going well. And so I took some time and just swept. And I emptied out some trash bins, and I cleaned out the CNC mill, and I went over some shelves and picked out some stuff and threw it away. I love throwing things away. That always feels good. I'm sure you guys know shops are clutter magnets. And so every once in a while, just going through and saying, you know what? This just needs to go. It's just freeing. I love it. So now that I'm back from my little mini vacation band tour last week, I'm hoping to get back into the routine of 2 Facebook Live videos a week. CNC will be one of the next topics. Some more close-up stuff on the Swift press. I know people still have questions about trim molds, so I'll be doing a longer one on that. And there was something else that somebody was asking about on Instagram. I asked for podcast recommendations, and a bunch of guys thought I was asking for questions about what I should talk about on my podcast. I don't currently have a podcast. But I did note their requests and their suggestions. Some of you guys, like Todd May, had a question. And I will try to incorporate those questions into future Facebook Live broadcasts and answer some of them. So, one last thing. When you're considering equipment upgrades, it's really good to have a set of outside eyes look at it. And so when I was getting ready to buy my first CNC, I sat down with a friend of mine who handles other people's money for a living. He handles a lot of money, and he's pretty sober-minded about money. Spending $10,000 or $20,000 on something to him is like, those amounts of money are not scary. Although to me at the time, that was scary. And so I sat down with him and said, this is the thing I'm thinking about getting. This is how much it costs. This is how long I think it'll take before I'm actually making money with it. And this is how much time I've put in already learning how to get ready, laying the groundwork so when I get this machine in, it will be productive. But I was looking at several different sizes at different price points. And he was very matter-of-fact and did not let me wiggle out of answering detailed questions about what parts I was going to make, how many would fit on the CNC, how long I would actually have to take to make them on the machine, what the benefit of the bigger, faster machine would be in dollars, and then get to a point where we looked at it and I had to, because obviously I wanted to go big or go home, and so I could easily have talked myself into a larger machine than the one I bought for my first CNC. But he did help me out a lot by saying, buy quality, but don't buy the biggest, baddest, fastest one you can right away because you're still a noob. You have no idea how to learn, how to actually use it yet. You've spent a bunch of time studying, reading, talking to machinists, asking a lot of questions, but until you actually have the machine and it's put up or shut up, you got to make parts. You don't know for sure if you can do it. And so if you're not sure about a particular piece of equipment you're thinking about buying, or you're struggling to prioritize which things should come next in terms of investments you make into your business, talk to other holster makers or talk to other businessmen outside the holster field. Give them a quick overview of what you do, ideally somebody who already knows you, and just ask them what they think about it. The ones that I consider to be baseline stuff that a shop really should have: a good bandsaw, floor standing model, a 14-inch. So that's Delta, Powermatic, Shop Fox, Jet, Rockwell. I don't like the little junky 10-inch benchtop ones. A good heat press. The PowerPress ones off eBay are acceptable. I'm liking my Geonite one a lot more right now. I realize at almost $1,200 that heat press is out of the ballpark for a lot of people. But a good bandsaw, a good drill press that doesn't vibrate, that actually runs the bit true, that doesn't wobble, that has a nice robust chuck where you can easily true up the table and keep it flat, where you can set depth stops that are reliable, that don't sag through when you sink your hole. Get a good drill press, because tool, just like in firearms, you can take an absolutely horrendous shooter and give him a gorgeous gun, and he will shoot horribly because he doesn't have the skills. But if you're a competent shooter, you will appreciate, you will make use of the better quality gear, the better trigger. You'll be in a position to actually receive the benefit of that. So if you run a holster company and you make any decent quantity of holsters, get a floor standing bandsaw. Don't screw around with a scroll saw. They're not good for this. A good drill press, nice and heavy so it's not vibrating a lot. A good belt sander. An adjustable speed buffing wheel or bench grinder with buffing wheels on it. And a heat press and a vacuum former. Those are the things that I think almost every small holster shop should have, no matter what you're making. Knife sheaths, great. It'll do those. If you're making a lot of magazine carriers, fantastic. Holsters, inside the waistband, outside the waistband, appendix, great. All those tools are equally usable in all those different kinds of product lines. And if the tools have a lot of downtime, like I have a couple of junk drill presses. They're tool shop. It's like Menards generic version. And I bought them both at pawn shops. They were really, really cheap. I only ever use them for beater jobs or things where I need to set up 2 or 3 different bit sizes for one thing that I'm going to drill, and I don't want to keep changing and resetting my depth stop on every one. And so I'll actually just bust out the other 2 drill presses, put them on a bench, put the right bits in them, and then have 3 drill presses in a row, drill those 1/4-inch holes, drill those 1/8-inch holes, drill those 3/32 holes, and not have to change the setup. But that only makes sense if you're drilling a lot of holes. So I hope that's been helpful. If you have questions, I will certainly sit down and go through all the comments. I'm pretty certain that my Facebook comments froze up again, for which I apologize. I have no control over it. But I will definitely, tonight, after the Facebook feed is done, I will go through and read all the comments, and I will answer the comments that I didn't see, and hopefully get your questions all answered. Thank you for coming by. I appreciate you guys spending some time on a Friday night with me. And I will be putting out some more stuff probably Tuesday or Wednesday. No, not Wednesday. Tuesday of next week. So hope to see you there. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.